You are infinite abundance. You cannot create what you are not. And money is a mirror image of your internal state. Wealth is not something you possess. It's something that you are and something that you share. We have been conditioned, we have been trained, and we have been taught to work completely backwards when it comes to manifestation and abundance. They work backwards thinking that abundance is something they have to attract. You are the ultimate power in the universe. You are consciousness. You are God. You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This is another part of a series called Being a Zero Limit Person, Part 3. So we've already done Part 1 and 2, which is I Am Unlimited Source, was Part 1 of the series. Part 2 of the series is I Am a Supreme Being. And Part 3 is, which we're going to talk about in this particular episode, is I Am Infinite Abundance. I know for a fact, I've done this for many years, and probably 70% of the people listening to this episode are having money challenges in some kind of way. So I know they're going to gravitate towards this episode. But what you're going to discover, what you're going to discover in this episode, is that we have been conditioned, we have been trained, and we have been taught to work completely backwards when it comes to manifestation and abundance. As a matter of fact, when it comes to abundance, most people don't even understand what it means and how to do it, even those people teaching it. And I'm going to clarify that for you today. Keep listening. Okay, so we're going to talk in this episode, Part 3 of the Being a Zero Limit Person series. We're going to talk about the fact that you are infinite abundance. Listen to what I said. You are infinite abundance. I didn't say that you can attract infinite abundance. I didn't say anything like that. And most people, and I did for many years, they work backwards thinking that abundance is something they have to attract without even recognizing they are already abundance. So before we really dig in, I want to talk about an observation that I had last week relative to this particular series. So I used to do all of the podcasts in-house, and I have the entire podcast outsourced to a podcast agency right now. And candidly, it's a blessing because they take a lot off our plate. And my podcast engineer is a guy, he lives in Venezuela, that he's a good guy. I really like the guy, and he's actually even listening now. But after every episode, I will ask him, did it make sense? Did everything come across okay? And as he was explaining to me his takeaways from the last episode, I had a realization. It dawned on me that he's processing these episodes literally what I call analytically, but in terms what I call content, meaning these episodes, all of them are content. When anything you read is content, a YouTube video that you watch is content, a webinar that you attend is content. But we have to be able to get the content into our context. And our context literally would be the frame that you are, meaning the mold that you are, the container that you are, the subconscious identity that you are. So you have your context, which is the frame of you psychologically, and then you put content into the context. If you've ever attended the Be to Have series, I've talked about this, and I've talked about how most people try to consume content, but they can't get it into their context, which means they cannot assimilate it, they cannot process it, they cannot live from that place. So it sounds good. They may really enjoy the content, but candidly, the content is not of huge value till the context can assimilate the value and start living from, the content and start assimilating the content. Now, where am I going with this? So to hear me say, I am unlimited source, or I am a supreme being, or I am infinite abundance. The abundance one, I'm sure, as I said earlier, probably gathers a lot of attention because people, they want abundance. But see, it's a whole different ball of wax from hearing that you are abundance, which is analytical and content, to knowing, knowing that you are infinite abundance. Now, when it comes to knowing these principles, I share them. But what a lot of people do, and I know because I've done this before, what a lot of people do, and we've got millions of downloads, and I'm grateful for that. And even if you're taking the content and it helps you a little bit, I'm thrilled that I can help you even a little bit. But it really becomes powerful when you can integrate the content into your subconscious framework and then start operating from the content. Meaning it's like putting in a new program, so to speak, and you start operating from a new program. But when I talk about these principles, it's not about hearing these principles. It's not about listening to them. It's not about thinking about them per se. It is about knowing these concepts. Because until you know them, they're going to sound good, air quote, on paper, but they're not going to take your life where I know that it can go. So I just wanted to share that thought that maybe you take some time. And the reason most of us don't take some time and some quiet time is we live in a world of distraction. We live in the attention deficit age. And you can thank people like, and I'm not kidding, you can thank people like Mark Zuckerberg for that. The reason why is Mark Zuckerberg wants you to consume as much Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp as you possibly can. Why? Because it makes him richer and richer and richer. I don't know Mark Zuckerberg personally, and I can't speak for him, but I really wonder if he actually cares, even though he's got kids. I wonder if Zuckerberg and people like him actually even care about kids. Credible research has shown that the rates of depression and social anxiety have skyrocketed in the last 10 years. Why? Because of social media. But where I'm going on this particular episode is that social media and all the noise in the world is a huge distraction. The entire world is full of distraction. News cycles, and news moves so fast. The news cycles, social media, and these things literally just cocoon it. They cocoon the planet and they infiltrate people's lives. And I look at thinking about you guys. I've had the good fortune of working with a shaman, Don Javier, now for decades, even before the advent of social media, of course. And I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time alone, to spend a lot of time in silence, to spend a lot of time observing myself, exploring myself, going within the depths of myself. But people don't do that for the most part anymore. In the transformational coaching program, I have an assignment in the program on one of the weeks where I ask people to sit for 4 hours in complete silence. No paper, no pen, no walking around, no talking to the dog, no going to the gym, no watching TV, no devices, nothing. It's like you are in a supermax prison. And in the supermax prison, you're like in an 8x8 cell. And perhaps you have no books, nothing to write, nothing. It's just you. And what's so interesting is I have to convey this in a way that almost is emphatic because people can't get their mind around when I say, just be with yourself for 4 hours in silence. And over the years, the amount of people that have said, Jim, I didn't do that exercise because I was afraid. And my thought is, and this sounds judgmental, but it's not, I promise. My thought is, seriously, you can't even spend 4 hours with yourself. What has the world become? And what have you been conditioned to be if you can't even spend, and you choose not to spend 4 hours with yourself, only with your thoughts? So because of the world we live in the attention deficit age, the things that I'm sharing in this particular series, it's not about gathering, pulling your attention to think about these things. This is your homework. It's coming to know yourself at a deeper level, but it's really hard because of the amount of distractions that we have. So this is your life. You make your own choices. You want to explore this, you don't. That's entirely up to you. But the way that I look at life is, let's say that you did like donuts, okay? And somebody put some donuts in front of you. And you just looked at the donuts. You could be like, oh, okay, well, those look like really tasty donuts. Okay. But then what if these donuts had like some pudding on the inside and you loved pudding? I mean, you just love pudding, but you only looked at the donuts. You never bit into a donut. You would never taste the pudding and wouldn't even know that it's there. Well, that's pretty much what I'm talking about in these episodes. It's not about listening. It's about knowing. It is about knowing that you are unlimited source. It is about knowing you are a supreme being. It's about knowing that you are infinite abundance, which again, we're going to dig into today. So the difference between knowing God power in you and thinking about God power in you is where I want to go. Now, when I use the word God, you've heard me say before that I'm not religious, I'm a spiritualist, but I'm going to use the word God in this particular episode because it's just an easy word. We all know that word. And yet, of course, we all have connotations tied to it, as I did for many years. I had vestiges of many years of being in the Baptist church tied, and that emotional baggage tied to the concept of God, when that's all dogma. That's not God. But if you don't want to call it God, as I've said before many times, call it consciousness, because that's physics. Everything is consciousness. So when I talk about God, that's not religious at all. I could easily say consciousness, okay? That is the God power in you. But see, if it's in you, that's also what you are. Relative to this episode, that God power in you, how about this? If however you deem to be God, or whatever you deem to be God, consciousness, divine force, quantum dimension, God, however you call it, whatever you call it, and consciousness is infinite. I mean, it's just physics, okay? It's just the bottom line. You can argue all you want, but as they say, talk to the hand. I mean, it's just science, okay? If God is infinite and abundant, and you are unlimited source, which source is God, which I talked about in the first episode, then if God is infinite abundance and you are God, then would you not also be infinite abundance? Ponder that. Because see, that infinite abundance, as I said earlier, many people seek abundance outside of themselves, not realizing that all abundance doesn't start on the outside. All abundance starts on the inside, which is why this podcast is called Transform Your Life from the Inside Out. The same thing with abundance. You do not create abundance from the outside in. You create abundance from the inside out. I could take two people and put them in an abundant situation, and one person had abundance in them and they knew they were abundance. I didn't say they knew they had abundance. I said they knew they were and are abundance. And I can take another person that doesn't know their abundance and put them in that very same situation. And then we can walk away a day later. And the person that knows they are abundance will walk away abundant. But the person that does not know they are abundant will walk away the same way they walked in, empty-handed. So I guess another metaphor, and we'll keep on going here, would be, I gave you one of a donut, but would be, for example, a steak dinner. Now, I don't know if you like steak or not. I do like steak, and my favorite steak is ribeye, but you can pick any food that you want. But I like a really good prime grade ribeye. To me, that's nirvana. Whether or not it grosses you out, you like it, you don't like it, whatever it is. But I'm just giving you an example here. I like a really good steak dinner. There's a whole different world, or it's a whole different world, to literally see a menu that says steak dinner, or to see a picture of a prime grade ribeye versus eating and tasting a prime grade ribeye. So if you're thinking about all of this, if you're thinking that you are abundance and you're thinking about it analytically, that's no different than looking at the steak on the menu. But if you're literally integrating this and pulling this into you and knowing that you are literally divine force, unlimited source, that automatically makes you infinite abundance in that second. And that's like eating the steak and you're no longer looking at it anymore. So when you know yourself, as I just said, as God, then you automatically know yourself as a zero limit person, and a zero limit person would know themselves as abundant. Now, let's talk about abundance because 99% of people have it backwards. And I said this a couple of minutes ago, and I lived this way for many years of my life. They think abundance is external. And hey, I'm not going to kid you. I thought that for many, many years, even till several years ago. And the illusion that I was living in till about 10 years ago is I have created a significant amount of abundance in my life. And we tend to, which I did, which is what most of the world does, we think, oh, okay, I created that money. I built that company. I created that portfolio. I created that wealth. I created those millions of dollars. The reality is, perhaps, but you didn't create anything. You simply are a medium because everything comes from source. You are a medium for abundance, and you have to let the abundance come out of you, but you can't let the abundance come out of you until you recognize yourself as abundance. So abundance must first, I'm going to say this very slowly, abundance first must be internal because you cannot have what you are not. So you think about a homeless person, and when you think about them, you look at them externally and they don't have any abundance. But see, the external is a reflection of the internal. So because they're broke and poor in their mind, they're broke and poor in their environment. I ran into a friend of mine today, and I want to tell you a story in just a moment, but I want to back up and preface this story. Is being wealthy is not about money. It's about evolution. And the friend that I ran into today, he actually used to be my massage therapist. And he and I get along extraordinarily well. His name is Jacob, and he lives here in Sedona, and he does spectacular deep tissue sports body work and massage. Whenever I connect with Jacob, it's so peaceful. He's so easy to be around, and he's so enjoyable and so pleasant. And probably every couple of weeks, I run into him at Whole Foods. And today he and I had a long chat. We were chatting. And I said, Jacob, when I'm around you, I always feel so at peace. I feel so good and so joyful being around you. And he almost started crying. And I want to back up and I want to tie it to abundance. The reason Jacob's not my massage therapist right now is Jacob is generally booked out 2 weeks in advance. I mean, this is a little bitty frickin' town we live in with locals. Most of his clients are locals. And I'm kind of a last minute person. I stay so busy with so many things that when I want to get a massage, I'll be like, okay, it's Wednesday. Maybe I can get a massage tonight, maybe tomorrow, maybe, Friday at the latest, 2 days later, or whatever, as an example. And Jacob's always booked out weeks in advance. He says, I bring my heart to my body work. I bring myself at the deepest level, and Jacob is very, very spiritual. He goes, I bring myself with an open heart and with love to work on people. I don't doubt Jacob at all. And here's the thing, the point I was making is I know probably from the gym, working out, half a dozen massage therapists in town. And a lot of these guys I know, and 2 or 3 of them have worked on me. One of them that did body work equal to Jacob. I'm a little hesitant because I'm thinking through this. He did body work that was the equivalent. I mean, he was pretty amazing body work. Really good guy, decent guy, enjoyable guy to talk to. but he was always struggling. Now, I take a step back. Why is Jacob always booked 10 days to 2 weeks in advance, whereas this other person, I'll just call him Bob, literally was struggling and suffocating for clients? So much so that he moved out of Sedona and moved down to Scottsdale, where obviously there are millions of people not in Phoenix and the Scottsdale area, and he moved. But what I want you to notice is he literally moved demographics, moved where he lived because he wasn't created what he wanted to create in this area, this part of the country. So he moves to a different part of the country, yet somebody that's got equivalent skills that he has, or skills equivalent to his, is doing just fine and doing extremely well in Sedona. My whole point is wealth is not something you possess. It's something that you are and something that you share. I'll say it again. Wealth is not something you possess. It's something that you are and something you share. So these two massage therapists, Jacob and Bob, Jacob would share the wealth of his heart and his presence and just how enjoyable he is to be around. Bob was the same way, but you know what? Most people would never know the difference. If I put you in a room with Jacob and Bob, and then, they left, and I said, what do you think of them? What's your opinion of these guys? You would probably say, they're both really enjoyable guys. They're smart, they're likable, they're affable, they've got a good sense of humor, they're a pleasure to talk to. But see, here's where it all comes down to the subtleness of frequency and vibration, because you can feel Jacob's frequency and the depths of his love. Now, it's not a masculine or feminine love. It's just, it exudes from him. Bob, you don't feel the same thing. And I was telling, actually, when I was talking to Jacob today, I said, Jacob, you remind me of my friend Gary Zukav, because when I'm talking to Gary Zukav, I just feel pure radiance. He and I chat quite a bit, and it's just a very pleasant conversation. And he and I get along and connect energetically very, very well. And when I'm talking to Jacob, I said, I feel like I'm talking to Gary. But both of these beings, they have the heart wealth inside of them. They have this, I guess we'll call it an it factor, okay? But this it factor is their energy, which is their frequency and vibration, which is what attracts the money, to them. Now, some of you might be saying, well, okay, Jim, how come some gnarly and nasty people attract money? I'll get there in just a moment. The bigger point is that Jacob and Gary are emanating source energy, which is all love. But see, source energy is also infinite abundance. So notice again, the abundance is not on the outside. The abundance is on the inside, and we have to access the inside. But what are most of us doing? No judgments. I did that for 35 years. I'm chasing the abundance on the outside, and I'm changing my sneakers every 2 blocks because I'm running and 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 chasing the abundance on the outside by doing and doing and doing and thinking and doing and thinking and analyzing and doing and thinking and running more and this job and this strategy and that strategy and running, and it's exhausting. And when I learned to work from where I'm sharing with you in this podcast from the inside out, knowing that I am abundance, not I'm attracting abundance, not that I'm creating abundance. I am abundance. That's when I started creating abundance very, very quickly. You've heard me talk before about the Be to Have concept. We just did the Be to Have training. And by the way, we've had probably 290,000 people now register for that series over the years. And we're going to be doing a new and upgraded Be to Have in the next offering in the springtime. But be to have is you must be before you can do, before you can have. And you must be open-hearted. You must be loving. You must be kind. You must be abundant before you can do anything, before you can have abundance. You must be before you can do, before you can have. But many people want to have, but they're not being abundance. But see, I'm going deeper than just to being at a human identity level. I'm going down to know yourself as God. Know yourself as a reflection of the Supreme Being. Know yourself as a sourcer. Know yourself as consciousness. Know yourself as God. But nope, what a lot of us do, we do what we are taught to do, which I did again for 35 years. I chose this word intentionally because it will have an emotional hit to it. And I want to make an emotional hit with this statement. But many people that don't have money, they beg the universe for money. Many people don't know how to pray. People actually pray, but they pray for something they don't have, meaning universe, bring me X, Y, Z. And then the universe says, okay, well, you're praying, and in your prayer, you don't have it. Therefore, I'm going to correspond to that and make sure that you don't have it. But notice how backwards it is. They're praying for something outside of themselves, which is already in them. So most people beg the universe. Now, let me ask you this. If you've ever said, oh, please God, please Buddha, please Muhammad, please consciousness, please divine mind, bring me money, bring me a home, bring me a boyfriend, bring me a girlfriend, bring me this, bring me that. How are you being? Be, do, have. How are you being? And how you're being is you are being abundantly empty. So people think that value resides in money. That's not true. It's a human illusion. The value resides in the being and the soul that creates the value. The value is not in the value. The value is in the soul creating the value. So many of us, me too, 35 years, what we do is we see all this external value. It's all an illusion, because the external value that we're chasing literally comes from the internal value, and all the internal value, whatever it is and to whatever degree it is, creates the external value. So if we don't have any external value, we're not creating it from any internal value. You know, Don Javier has always said to me, you can't give what you don't have. I'm going to take that a little bit differently and say here, you can't create and have what you are not. And I've said that many times before, but in different ways. You cannot create what you are not. And money is a mirror image of your internal state. Let's dig into that for a moment. Study what I'm going to share here. Dive deep. Money is a mirror of your internal state. So ask yourself this: why? Why do I want money? Do I want money to show off? Do I want money for, which is what many of you want, do I want money for security? Now think about that. Why do you want the money? Is it for opulence? Is it for security? But think about what it is that drives you. Because see, you're seeking money from one of two places. 99% are from one place, 1% is from the other. You're seeking money from one of two places. You're seeking money from love and you're attracting it, or from fear and you're repelling it. Now, let's go back to the internal state. And I asked you, I said, money is a mirror of your internal state. And I said, what is your internal state? And you probably got got a little stump there. But guess what? If you're wanting money to save for a rainy day, that's all external and you're hoarding. So therefore, what then is your internal state? Your internal state is that of being a hoarder. You can't hoard money. Money is meant to be used in flow, in the cycle. You cannot hoard money because it's like taking a garden hose and kinking it. It coagulates, it stops. And that's why many of you hoard, and then you wonder why you're not getting more money in your life, because it's stagnation. And where there's stagnation, things die. So let's go back to Jacob. Jacob literally is booked out 2 weeks in advance. But what's his internal state? His internal state is pure open-heartedness, even relative to money. Remember, I told you just a bit ago that I'll talk about why some people that are pretty gnarly people attract money. Jacob's internal state is open-heartedness, and that includes money. So Jacob doesn't chase money, but there are people that chase money But you know what? They're open-hearted, so to speak, to the flow because they know that they can actually bring the money into their life. So their internal state is not a fear of money. Their internal state is, hey, I know I attract money. So he's pissing a lot of people off in the world. I'm pretty much indifferent about it. Why? Because I'm standing back watching humans play their little games. That sounded a little bit arrogant. It's not, I promise, but I literally am standing back watching humanity play their little games. If you get on Twitter, which I try to avoid, you see the left side throwing rocks at the right side, and you see some nasty people on both sides, and you see the right side throwing rocks at the left side. And it's pretty nasty and pretty gnarly and pretty personal for a lot of different people. The reason I'm going here is because I'm watching all this, but I want to mention a name again. You know, as I said, this guy's pissing a lot of people off, Donald Trump. Now, many years ago, back in 2005 and 6, I used to speak at the same events as Donald Trump. I've told this story before. And at these events, I was actually the national spokesperson for the company that sponsored these events. And these events had big names: Donald Trump, Tony Robbins, George Foreman, Robert Kiyosaki, blah, 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 blah. And I would go speak and because I represented the company, I would go do my speaking. And then I would hang out with other friends of mine that were speakers. And we would do events in New York City and Seattle and LA and Minneapolis and different places across the US. But one day I was waiting on a friend to go to dinner. We were going to go to a steak dinner in New York City so I could have a ribeye. And I was backstage and I heard Trump speaking. And he said that in 1992, he was dead broke. Now, personally, doesn't matter. I mean, just don't hold this against me. My personal opinion is that I would choose not to be around Donald Trump as a person because I don't like the energy. The energy is actually quite repulsive to me. You may love the guy, and that's your prerogative. And me not wanting to be around the energy is my prerogative. But you know what? I have to have compassion because he's also living his karma and his dharma, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but Trump was speaking, and he said in 1992 he was dead broke, and he remembers passing a homeless guy, and he thought that guy is worth $2.9 billion more than me, because see, he was literally $2.9 billion in debt. And they said, that guy's worth $2.9 billion more than me. So Trump was in debt that much. And today he's worth, I don't know what, 3, 4, 5, maybe even a little more billions of dollars. Why? Because in his external world, he was dead ass broke. But his internal world, he still saw himself. He still identified as a billionaire. That's why he went back to the billionaire status again. So, how do you identify? Do you identify as the container of skin that you walk around in with all the limitations and the nationality and the religions and the dogma? Is that how you identify? Or do you identify as a zero limit being, as a supreme being, as unlimited source, which you are, whether or not you want to believe it? Do you identify with all your human dogmatic nonsense, or do you identify as a supreme being? Do you identify with all the human nonsense and limitation you've learned about money, or do you identify as infinite abundance? Because how you identify is what you are going to create for you and your own life. It's very important you understand this, is money responds to the internal state of the person, not what the person does. Again, be, do, have. Because you've seen people literally do a whole lot, and they're still broke. Maybe they're working 2 jobs. Maybe they're working 3 jobs. But money will always, it can work no other way. Money will always correspond to your internal state. And if you walk around constantly saying, I'm broke, money's hard, money's hard, money's hard. Money doesn't come to people like me. Money is really challenging to make. Do you think if you could package unlimited source, supreme being, God, so to speak, let's say that. Do you think if you packaged God would walk around saying, well, hell, I don't know, I'm going to pay the rent this month. You know, I can't pay my student loans. I mean, all these angels over here need brand new harps. We can't afford any brand new harps right now. We need to build on. We got more people coming to heaven. We got to build on an addition, an entire new subdivision to heaven. We just can't afford it. No, 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 no. So money responds to the state of the person, the internal state. But in this series, your internal state is a reflection of the Godhead in you. Your internal state is sorcery. You are from source. You are unlimited. That must be your internal state, not the internal state of we're broke, money's hard, this happened in the economy, that happened in the economy, this person's president, we have sanctions here, we have tariffs here, we have which is, see, that's the external world. And then I go back to people like Zuckerberg that propagate this shit and push this shit, and CNN and Fox and the media. They pump out all this crap, and it's human, it's human sewage. Sewage is what it is. Now, there may be some facts about what's really happening in the world, but the energy behind all of this is sewage. So you've got to decide where you're going to play. What field are you going to play on? Are you going to play in the sewage? And hey, if you want to, it's nobody's place to judge you. Knock yourself out. But if you're not getting what you want and you're not creating what you want, that's where you're playing. And that's pretty gnarly. And I played there before. It's pretty nasty. And it's exhausting and it's frustrating. Been there, done that. I've come to the realization in my 60 years, as I mentioned before, I can't do anything on my own. It's all consciousness. See, because without consciousness, let's say there was this big wall and every single human being on the planet had a button, and that button was the on and off switch to a person's consciousness. And if that switch is switched off, that person's consciousness stops and they die. So without consciousness, I'm dead. This physical body is dead. Not me as a soulful being. This physical body is dead. Somebody pushes that button, boom, I'm gone, I'm out of here. So the power is not in me. The power is in the consciousness. And consciousness literally is the supreme being, divine mind, God. Now the thing about God and money, it doesn't matter the morality of the money. God, consciousness, is simply going to correspond to those people that carry money, vibration, and their frequency. That's it. That's it. You know, if a person like, let's say Donald Trump, we know some mutual people, et cetera. I'll leave it at that. And if you've watched any amount of documentaries, and I watch a lot of documentaries on a lot of different things, the guy literally might push the envelope, and I'll just say might. I'm going to leave it at that. Might push the envelope of ethics and morality, human-based ethics and morality, okay? Even Donald Trump, you know, I think about when I used to speak at events with him, or not with him, he was at the same events I was, and I was speaking there. And remember, as I said before on the podcast, I walked into a family gathering. I flew back from New York that night. And Don Javier, the first thing he said to me is, their density is rubbing off on you. And I said, whose density? And he goes, all those people you work around, Trump and Robbins and et cetera, their density is rubbing off. He goes, you take all those people, you put them on a blender, you literally blend them up, pour it into a mold, you let it dry, you've got nothing more than a dried cinder block of spirituality. That was pretty impactful when he told me that. But see, the universe doesn't judge about good or bad or right or wrong. It simply, so to speak, fills the bill of the consciousness. So if the consciousness is about abundance, like Trump when he was broke, that's literally, he's channeling the divine abundance through him, even though he might be a gnarly individual, or maybe even I'm guessing they still exist, a mob boss or a drug lord or whatever. They all, just like you're channeling your consciousness, they're channeling their consciousness of money, M-O-N-E-Y. So that's why we literally, from a human perspective, look at it and go, how does that gnarly person that treats people like shit, that's a slumlord, how are they a multimillionaire? The universe doesn't judge. The universe is impartial. So what the universe does is whoever carries the frequency and vibration of the universal abundance, guess what? They are the ones the universal abundance goes to. So Many people don't know about the God power in them, but that's how it happens. They just don't know how they're using it. Because also, many people think they're doing it through their behavior, through their doing, and they're not. They're doing it through the consciousness in them, and that consciousness is the Godhead, the energy, the divine force, divine will, divine mind in them. And it's always, that's why it's vital that you listening now, you understand and you create a relationship with divine mind. And that's why I've said, get to know, come to know yourself as God. Because when you come to know yourself as God, you recognize easily, yes, I am unlimited source, just like that. I am supreme being. I am infinite abundance. Because if God is that, you are that, and you are God, and you cannot argue with that because everything is consciousness. So I want to dig a little bit further in the Secret podcast about this, and I want to talk more about how I literally cultivate this in my own life. But for now, your transformational takeaway is you are God. Because see, you're made in the image of God, divine mind, consciousness. You cannot not be. And because the universe is infinite abundance, you are infinite abundance. But what you do is you cut the infinite abundance off by choosing not to literally connect with infinite abundance. It's all around you. It's flowing all around you like air, and you are the one who cuts it off through identifying as anything other than the infinite abundance within you. So for those of you that want to dig deeper, I'll catch you over on the Secret Podcast. For those of you here now, again, your takeaway is you are a supreme being. You are the ultimate power in the universe. You are consciousness. You are God. Every bit of that is infinite abundance, because that is infinite abundance, and you are that, and you're an extension of that. You also are infinite abundance. Claim it. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you over on another episode. Bye-bye.